Welcome back. President Trump reportedly thinking about invoking the Defense Production Act as the legal basis to save Spirit Airlines. Chanley Painter is here now to explain what this means for a possible rescue plan. Hi, Chanley.
Hey, Griff. Good morning. So according to CBS, the Trump administration is exploring invoking the Defense Production Act as part of a strategy to save Spirit Airlines. This would allow the Pentagon to use part of the bankrupt carrier's fleet for military missions like transporting troops and cargo. This comes as a lawyer for Spirit Airlines said Thursday the company is in very advanced discussions with the U.S. government on terms of a material financing package. And this after President Trump said, quote, openly expressed his interest in helping Spirit Airlines, and the administration continues exploring possible options to ensure the airline remains in operation for its passengers and employees. Now, the statement from the White House is making clear that any reporting about the mechanism or structure of any deal between the federal government and Spirit Airlines, unless officially unveiled by the administration, should be regarded as speculation.
The Pentagon reportedly wants to use the automaker's workforce and facility capacity to boost weapons production as wars in Ukraine and Iran have strained U.S. inventory. The Wall Street Journal first reported the discussions, noting that officials described the request as a matter of national security. The Journal also reported that German manufacturing is shifting towards defense production as the automotive sector combats a slump in demand and growing competition from China, with the government pushing to convert struggling operations into defense contractors. According to the Detroit Free Press, GM and Ford would likely not directly produce weapons, but instead make structural components for subcontracting to weapons manufacturers. Relevant capabilities could include casting, stamping, forging, and working with plastics and other composites. The conversations remain exploratory with no defined details. Starting in December, all men between the ages of 18 and 25 will be automatically registered for the military draft. They'll be added into the Selective Service System. That's the independent government agency that keeps a list of all eligible Americans. For decades, the majority of men would register themselves or face a felony. Congress tucked the rule change into a bipartisan defense bill that President Trump signed into law late last year. It comes as enrollment has slipped in recent years, even as worries about conflicts with nations like China and Russia have grown. There has not.
Congress has a deadline coming up on May 1st. That's when Trump's illegal war in Iran will have reached the 60-day point. Be 60 days old. And according to the War Powers Act, which was passed in 1973 after the Vietnam War ended, according to the War Powers Act, a president is not allowed to carry on an overseas war without congressional authorization past 60 days. So on May 1st, this war becomes illegal. That's why Trump calls it an excursion. That's why Mike Johnson says it's not a war. See, Republicans are insisting it's not a war. They're saying, well, we don't have troops in harm's way. It's not a war. Really? Because 300 wounded, 12 dead? Really? It's not a war.
Shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, which is to say in the Paleo-Hebrew, Yahweh, which is the name of our Heavenly Father, meaning He is, and that is who the world ignorantly calls God. Bahashim, which means in the name. Yahweh Shai, which means He is our salvation. All right? And that is who the world also ignorantly calls Jesus, a so-called black man, who, by the way, only came for the Israelites. Okay? Now, what brings us to our discussion / topic tonight is wartime. All right? Because as you saw from all those clips combined together to convey a message, we're pushing forward towards this third world war. All right? Here it is. America is trying to buy Spirit Airlines, a so-called quote-unquote failing airline. They're trying to buy it under the Defense Production Act so that they can use it to what? Further aid the process of deploying troops and military cargo. And then on the other hand, you got the Pentagon approaching companies like Ford and General Motors, asking them to use their equipment to help produce military ammunition that they've depleted in this war. Oh, my bad, excursion. Because according to the War Powers Act, after 60 days, the president has to notify Congress whether or not he's going to remove the troops or ask for an extension of 30 more days to continue the war. So under the auspices or guise of excursion, Trump think that he can dance around the term war, all right? See? So going back to what? That they're using the auspices or the guides of these other things to hide the inevitable, that we're getting ready to go to war, okay? Like stated earlier, you got Spirit Airline under the Defense Production Act. You got the Pentagon approaching General Motors and Ford, allegedly, to help replenish the ammunition and everything else that's been depleted through this Israel and Iran war. Then you got the military draft, that they're going to automatically draft military age men between the ages of 18 to 25. That's being enacted in December. All right. And you don't think that we're headed towards war? Where have you been hiding or living under a rock? This year is jumping off, man. And we're just in the, first quarter or second quarter, depending on how you look at it. All right? Because January, February, March is past. We're here in April, approaching May next week or next weekend. See? So things are just looking like they're setting the stage for 2027 to be, if not close, an all-out, war. Lord willing, Albaratazar. See? But before we can go to that point, they got to first make that microchip mandatory. Can't address that enough. The war where we thinking the missiles coming back and forth won't escalate to that point until the microchip is first made mandatory. Globally. Worldwide. Okay? And that very well could happen by the end of this year, if not the beginning of next. Okay? Because they're not putting all these provisions into place just for nothing. They know something. Okay? And guess what? So do we. Through the power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Wartime. This is the book of Psalm, chapter 55 and verse 21. It reads, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. We're just on an excursion. We're just searching out certain things to see whether or not they're right for the picking. Meanwhile, he's back here in the States reboosting or recharging his military inventory, getting prepared, okay, for the inevitable, all right? It says the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. We're just having an excursion. But war was in his heart. This is what this devil thinks about, all right? Going and conquering, okay? So he's ready to set up shop over there in Iran, so-called Middle East. And the least of the flock, the small hats, have drawn them out. So now it's time, man. Okay? It's time. All right? Wartime. And the Lord is a man of war. So he's allowing it to escalate to that point. Okay? So if you ain't never lived through a war or, had to go through the pains of what it requires of you having to sacrifice in wartime, you about to. Okay? You about to. In some way, shape, or form. All right? Some of you might have great-grandparents old enough that could tell you how it was during World War II. The sacrifices that they had to make. Okay? To so-called, quote-unquote, save this country. Oh yes, they had to give up they had to sacrifice. They had to give up a lot of things. All right? Guess what? It ain't going to change. It's going to be a lot of stuff that they're going to ask you to give up under the guise or auspices of better serving your country to get ready to go to war. Okay? We're fastly approaching that time. It says, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. It's in his DNA. It's in his makeup. He shall live by the sword. That's his blessing. So it's by no sheer coincidence that he's going to be taken out by the sword. What did Yahushua tell his disciple? Let's read that. Matthew 26 and 52. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 26 and 52. Then said Yahushua unto him, put up again thy sword into his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Esau, you going out by the sword, man, because that's how you live. All right, you live and reign by the sword. So guess what? The Lord has his army, his arsenal of swords, which is those missiles that these other nations now possess, that they're going to use against you in this third world war. The end all to be all. And then Yahushua is going to return to put the icing on the cake. See? To completely finish you. War time. So it says the word of his mouth, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. We in an excursion. People was wondering why Trump was using the word excursion, because he was setting the stage back then to get this extended time, because it wasn't under an excursion deemed or looked at as a war. See? That's what these devils want, man. They want this thing. It's actually the will of the Heavenly Father. He's using them. All right? And he's put the spirit on them to want this thing to escalate to that extent where, hey, this economy is going to crash, man. It's going to taint. It's going to plummet. It says the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Live by the sword, you're going to what? Die by the sword. That's why it says in Revelation 13 and verse 9, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience. Revelation 13 and verse 9, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. See, this is speaking of Esau and all the other nations. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword, that's how this man lived. He lived by killing with the sword. His military might, okay? It says, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. See? He's going out the same way he lived. Let's read that again. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. We understand. This is how it's going out, man. Okay? This devil's going out the same way he lived. Barbaric. You see? Ruthless. It says, here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And we vehemently believe that. All right? Because why? It's in the Holy Bible. Okay? We believe it. He's going out. Little do he know, he's walking into a snare, a trap. All right? That Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai has set for him. Okay? And there's nothing he can do. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 8. Wartime. This is the book of Ecclesiastes 3 and 8. It says, a time to love and a time to hate. A time of war. That's where we're heading. Wartime. And a time of peace. Hey, those days are over, man. Those are long gone forgotten. This shit's finna really amp up. Once all hell breaks loose, it's too late for talks of peace, man. They trying to use a ceasefire, but it's only to reposition themselves to better get prepared for this onslaught that they think they're gonna push and bring to the Iranians, man. But little do they know, China and Russia is gonna get involved. See? They just don't understand prophecy, man. Okay? But they gonna soon find out, all right, that it's the Lord that controls it all, all right? As it says in Daniel 4 and verse 17. It says, this matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man. So they're going to find out, man, who's really in control. All right? Who is the creator and who is the creation? There's going to be a strong separation of who's the creator and who is the creation. All right? And we're going to find out that Yahweh is truly indeed the creator. Okay? It says that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man and giveth it to whomsoever he will. See? Now the creation has gotten big-headed. Okay? Thinking that somehow he has a say-so in the matter. No. You're a puppet. Okay? You're a puppet. The Lord is the puppeteer. He turns the hearts of the kings whithersoever he wills. Whithersoever he will. Like the waters of a river. Proverbs 21 and verse 1. Roughly paraphrasing. It says, and setteth up over it the basis of man. This is why Esau is in rulership. The Lord set him up. Okay? He gave him the technology, the wherewithal to create these things, to split an atom, to create an atomic bomb. Okay? Because the same way he lived is the same way he's going to go out. He's going out by that sword, man. And the Lord's already prepared that by giving these other nations the technology to rival that. That's why it says in the book of Joel, beat your plowshares into swords. Okay? May have to get that. War time. It says, Joel 3 and 10, beat your plowshares into swords. These are the other nations that was once deemed and looked at as weak. Now, in these latter days, these last days, they have the technology to rival America. That's why you jump up to verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. War time. Wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war draw near. Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, They coming together for this sole purpose. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares, which is a tool for agriculture, into swords, which is a tool for devastation. See? It was once looked at as an agricultural country, but now, through this technology, they have some weapons that can rival America and give them a good run for their money, because Yahushua is ultimately going to what? Take them all out. It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks, another agricultural tool, into spears, another weapon. Let the weak say, I am strong. And that's their mindset, man. Now they got to strike. In their mind, they're thinking now is the time to strike while the iron is hot. See? So little do America know, China and Iran is backing the Strait of Hormuz for this. Okay? They want that dollar to go weak. They want that petrodollar to what? Collapse. They want the majority of the currency to come through their currency, whether it's the BRICS or whatever type of cryptocurrency they're putting together. They want majority of the revenue and trading that's going on in the Strait of Hormuz to leave from the petrodollar and come to theirs. All right? And America's not having it, man. But guess what? There's nothing they can do. War time. It's getting ready to go down, man. All right? And we telling you before it does, get right with the Lord. Repent. Seek him 10 times more. All right? While you still got an opportunity. Israel, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, because this devil is getting ready to come down with great wrath. Revelation 12:12. Because he knoweth that he have but a short time. War time. Let's go ahead and close out with 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. It reads, be sober, be vigilant. See? The Lord is telling you this. Because why? You're going to need it in that time. Okay? It says, because your adversary, the devil, okay? The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart, his mind. That's what the heart goes into, your mind. It says, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Those that cannot differentiate between wartime and peacetime, they're going to be devoured. It's just that simple. All right? So we got to continue and pray that the Lord continues to work with us and on us to perfect us, because wartime is drawing near. So with that being said, pray someone was edified through this lesson, and until the next time, if it be the Lord's will, stay strong, stay in the faith. We're almost home. Shalom. Peace.